This time on the Magick Kitchen, we are joined by author Mawiyah Kai El-Jamah Bomani.
I'm Leandra Witchwood.
And I'm Elise Wells.
And welcome to the Magick Kitchen podcast, where we talk about magic, kitchen witchcraft, herbs,
and everything in between.
The Magick Kitchen podcast is funded and supported by thewitchwoodteahouse.com, offering a variety of hand-blended loose leaf teas as well as loose herbs for all of your ritual, spell work, wellness, and everyday enjoyment needs. If you would like to support this podcast while sipping a great cup of tea, head over to thewitchwoodteahouse.com and find the magic that's in store for you.
So the mundane and the magical. This has been a topic lately. I see it on social media a lot, and I'm getting this question a lot in my magical living community. How do I bridge the mundane with the magic? And it's funny because before we got on today, Leandra and I were saying how, like I was like, have you been doing any cool magic lately? Like, has anything been going on? And you were like, well, yeah, but like, it's just the everyday stuff. And I think that's actually what we should talk about, because I think for what we do, like, my everyday stuff. I'm in the States right now, and I don't have an altar here. And I thought about setting one up. I do have an ancestor altar I put together because I'm in Pennsylvania, which is the land that raised me. It's where my family's mostly from on my mom's side. And it's been a nice chance to connect to that energy. But like if I filmed, let's say, like the magic I'm doing, it would just look like a lot of walking around, a lot of literal tree hugging, or a lot of arms in the air with my palms up to the sky. Like, you might think I'm doing yoga really slowly. It's not.
Or Tai Chi, or I don't know.
Yeah. But I'm doing real magic, it's like really happening for me, but it's become part of my mundane.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, when we start making the magical part of, when we start living that magical life and we start making it a part of our everyday existence, it really does look pretty either just bizarre or normal and boring.
It's funny because I started out like giving my example, like, oh yeah, this is so boring. Then I'm like, actually, no, it's weird because I'm like talking to a squirrel.
Yeah, you're talking to a squirrel, or you're touching a tree.
Yeah.
And I do this every time I go for a walk. I purposely go for a walk normally alone. Sometimes I'll go with Stacy and we hang out together and we visit new walking trails and stuff like that. But normally I go alone. And this is what I do. I talk to the trees.
Yeah.
And people probably think I'm crazy, but what I'll do is I'll put my earbud in so it looks like I'm on the phone.
Clever.
And I will literally talk to the trees. And, I'll have my phone, like I make it look like I'm not crazy, because I know to the untrained eye, to somebody who's not in the magical community, who does not commune with the nature spirits, who does not recognize genus loci, they would totally think I was some crazy person just talking to themselves. And why am I not standing on the street corner doing this, right?
Yeah.
So literally I will have my phone out and I will make it look like I'm in a conversation with somebody on the phone. And I'm saying, hey, you know what? You're looking pretty good today. Or, like whatever normal conversation is. But every once in a while I'll stop and I breathe, because our exchange, not only energetically, but physically with these trees and with the plants, is through breath. They provide us oxygen. We do the exchange, right?
Yeah.
So they get information from us through our breath, and we gain information from them through our breath. So I will literally stand and just breathe, or I'll find a park bench under a tree and I'll breathe. So that doesn't look necessarily unusual, but that's what the practice is. It's a lot of internal dialogue, a lot of internal focus, a lot of internal anything. And it's not this outwardly, you know, we don't have sparks flying from our hands and
yeah, it's not aesthetic, and it's not
right.
like it's almost undocumentable.
Right.
Like,
yeah, I'm not dressed in some flowing gown with a crown and, you know, beautiful flowers at my feet.
I'm in my pajama bottoms. Yep. I'm outside. Well,
in a hoodie.
So like my morning routine has become, it's more like, honestly, it's not even morning. It's like, I'm not a morning person. So it's afternoon.
No, you're not.
Like I don't eat in the morning. I just get ready, brush my teeth, you know, but then like my morning routine, like I shared this in my magical living community, it's 2 minutes long because that's all I can do. I'm not a morning person. You better believe my full moons are happening because they're at night.
Yes.
But a morning, So anyway, when I'm cooking the day before, like I'll have, if there's anything safe for deer to eat, I keep it aside. And then after I've had my coffee and done a little bit of writing in the morning, I will go outside. And I'm really blessed when I'm in Pennsylvania to literally be in the family home that I grew up in. Like, this is the land that raised me. These are the trees that were babies when I was too. Like, they were planted in the 90s, just like I was. And so I go out to these trees and we have about 23 deer I've seen total that live in these woods. And so if I know they can eat it, I save it for them and I take it out as an offering to the land. And it's fun because the deer at first, when I first got back, were like, what the heck? This is our land. Who are you? Get out of here. And now, like, we have moments, like we can make eye contact. And as long as I'm like a good 10 to 15 feet away from them, like they won't run, which is really special. And I think they also know that it's me leaving them, like, you know, cucumbers treats. And pumpkin guts. And so it's been so special. And like when I first arrived, I ran out to the trees like I would if I was running into my cousin for the first time in a while. Like I was like, oh my gosh, hey, hi, I'm here for a while. I'm excited. I'll get to be here while your leaves fall. And like, you know, I'm catching them up on some things that have happened for me. And it's just so moving.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't look good on Instagram, but that's okay.
No.
I think that's part of the issue right now is like, people are like, am I doing it right? Because it doesn't look like what I've seen.
Like, yes, that aesthetic. Well, and just like what you said before you came here, like you were craving that smell of fall. The decay, the leaves, the underbrush.
Exactly. And when I'm out there, that's what I'm doing. I'm literally like
just breathing it in.
Oh, like just it's like a drug, honestly. It's so enriching. Like, honestly, oxygen is like, we talked about this before, like breath work alters consciousness. You don't need shrooms. You don't need LSD. Nope. You just need to breathe right. And it alters your consciousness. So when you go outside and you're like, really breathing in like the petrichor after rainfall or the decay of the leaves. Like it's real. It is really magic.
Yes. But nobody else around you is going to know that unless they're experiencing the same thing. And even then it's different for you than it is for me. Yeah. You know, we could be in the same exact, okay. So since Elise has been here in the United States, we've been out hanging out and we went to Longwood Gardens and we were walking around the woods and we were, you know, smelling the decay and talking about the trees and touching the trees and talking to the trees and talking to each other and, you know, all of that. But it was still a different experience for me than it was for you.
Yeah. But at the same time, we're like, exactly. We're in that sacred bubble together, which is so fun.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we just wanted to start this episode with a bit of empowerment for your magical life to not feel like it has to look a certain way or be a certain way. Like, and it is the mundane. Like that's the thing. Like, I think some people come to the path. No, most of us, I think, come to the path to escape the mundane. Like, where like I need a refuge, but very quickly, if you're doing it right, like the magic seeps in until there is no separation, and that's absolutely, and that's a magical
everything
life.
You do. Yeah. From washing your dishes. So lately I've been playing this cute, cozy witch game on the Switch because I don't know, we had just a new resurgence of our Switch in the house. And it's just this cute little farming game that where the main character, you discovers that she's got a long lineage of witchcraft, and you start discovering that. So you start learning all these spells, and you do this farming, and you take care of this, take care of your grandmother, all this stuff. It's really cute.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there, I'm like, this is part of my craft. Like, just connecting with that child inside of me that wants to play a game, that wants to sit in a cozy bed with a cozy game with a cup of tea.
Yeah.
And that's all it has to be. It doesn't have to be much more than that. It's just reforming the bond of that inner child with that coziness of being in a safe and secure environment.
Yeah. Oh, that's gorgeous. So do you have any events coming up in your Rebel Mystic community in the next few weeks?
We always have some really cool things going on. So right now what we're focusing on is magical medicine making. So magical herbal medicine making. And this is going to be a long series that's going to turn into something bigger, because it's just something that I'm really excited about. So I'm going to share the crap out of it as much as I can. But so what I have right now are magical herbal medicine kits that I'm creating. The first one is the elderberry syrup kit. So you get everything except the liquid, and you also get the spell with it. And if you are a Mystic level subscriber, you also get the instructions on how to create the ritual around this magical medicine making. And later this month, the 30th, actually, we will be doing our magical medicine ritual where we infuse this medicine kit, this remedy, this herbal medicine with magic, and make it part of our craft and part of that magical herbalism aspect that I don't really hear anybody talking about. This was something I was taught, I don't know, 20, 25 years ago through my mentor, who she was just a visionary. Like, I think she should have been an author. She should have been a public speaker, because she had all this knowledge, and she only shared it with the people closest to her. And I think it's time to take that knowledge and spread it out, because there's so many avenues that we can utilize within our craft that I don't think they're talked about enough.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excied for that.
Yeah, it's really fun. I'm excited.
Yeah. You're the perfect person to teach this too, because your connection to herbs is deeper than, like, you make your teas. The Witchwood Tea House teas are delicious, but they're very healing. Like, if I'm having a bad day, like, I find the right tea from your teas, and it helps me. So, and I know I'm not the only one. I know there's lots of listeners who are like, same.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you ever want to just see what people have to say about my teas, like, go to Etsy and look at my reviews. Yeah. Like, I am astonished and humbled by these reviews every single day. And I'm like, oh my God, like, thank you. Like, it's so validating. Yeah. But I'm glad that what I care for, what my care and my attention and my dedication shows.
Yeah. And I've got my self-paced magical living community for the Busy Witch. You've got rituals, you've got exclusive videos, you've got meditations, all that good stuff. And you can join with a free trial as well to see if it's for you. And then I also have 3 workshops in December before I leave the US. So one of them, I know, I did 7 workshops total this trip, like, including these 3. So I'm excited to have 3 more before I go, because it's really my favorite thing is meeting listeners, meeting students in person, connecting to new people that I wouldn't have met otherwise. Like, it's so special to me to be able to do this. So I have no regrets, even though it's been crazy. 7 workshops in 7 weeks, but you know what? No big deal.
Wow.
But so the next one is December 3rd at the Serpent's Key. I'm returning. We had a great turnout for the Artemis Hecate workshop, and the recording is for sale in my course library on patreon.com. And I'm really excited about this one on the history of witchcraft, December 3rd, because it's the presentation of my research from my master's degree. So there's a lot of info in there that I did the deep dives, so you don't have to. So you get the diluted, like, oh, this is that. That's who this is. And I have a further reading guide, which includes actual downloadable books that are useful as well for further reading, which is cool. Awesome. And then after that, the very next day, Allie Knoll and I are co-hosting a workshop on astrocartography and deity work and how your astral map affects your path, your spiritual path. It's going to be a really good workshop. And then on the 11th, in Haverty Grace, Maryland, I'm presenting on Connection to Land Spirits, which is extra special because I've been spending a lot of time in Haverty Grace on this visit, and I've really gotten to know the land spirits there. So I'm hoping they'll attend as well because it's a really special topic in a really special place. So if you're like in the DC area and you don't mind a drive, like come on up to Haverty Grace. If you haven't been, it's worth the excursion anyway. And then if you want to toss in a bit of time at my workshop, that'd be cool too. It's limited to 12 spots, so they're filling up.
Yeah. That's awesome. I know it's going to be sad to see you go. I'm going to be sad to see you go.
It's going so
Even
fast.
though I see you every week, really.
I know. It's just so, it 7 weeks sounded so long, and then it's just like whipping past. Like, I don't understand. Hyper speed.
I can't believe it's end of November already, really.
I know. November is such a liminal month. Like, it's Samhain, but it's also like the world is trying to throw Christmas at you, and you're like, oh, but I'm still connected to my ancestors right now. Can you wait?
Yes. Yeah. I'm not ready for Christmas yet.
Yeah. Yuletide is a complicated time.
It is.
Real talk. Leandra and I could be trying to sell you socks or a VPN or that cereal everybody talks about, but we like to keep it witchy around here instead. And we can only do that because of the support of listeners like you. When you're joining my magical living community on Patreon, you're not only getting weekly shadow work journal prompts, new moon and full moon rituals, exclusive videos, exclusive meditations, plus bonus episodes of the Magick Kitchen podcast. But you're seriously keeping the lights on in the Magick Kitchen. Thank you for listening and reviewing the show. And if you're ready to meet me in the Magick Kitchen, pop over to patreon.com/Elise Wells and start your free trial. Let's deepen your magical practice together. Mawiyah Kai El-Jamah Bomani is an award-winning writer, educator, and spirit woman. Mawiyah is an 8th generation witch, Egun Medium, and Priestess of OYA in the Yoruba system of spirituality. She is also editor-in-chief of the Culture and African Traditional Spirituality e-zine, Oya and Soro. Mawiyah is the host of Fish Heads in Red Gravy, a podcast dedicated to celebrating marginalized people of the esoteric occult world. Her writings have appeared in numerous magazines, including The Crab Orchard Review, Dark Arrows, and Catch the Fire. She has written several plays, including Spring Chickens, which won her the Southern Black Theater Festival's 2012 to 2013 Playwright of the Year Award. She is also the Critical Mass 8 Literary Award winner and a CAT Artist Residency recipient. Mawiyah currently lives, writes, and conducts Orisa rituals and spiritual consultations, workshops, house cleansings, and divinations in both northern and southern Louisiana. Learn more at mawiyahkaiel-jamah-bomani.com, and we will put that link in the description as well.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I am so excited for this. Yeah.
Yeah. Conjuring the Calabash was one of my favorite reads this month. It's one of those books that it felt like a window into a world I don't live in, because in many ways it is. And we're really glad to have you here because we get questions from our listeners about hoodoo or voodoo or root work. And, you know, they say, can you do an episode? And the answer is no. You know, we can't. We need an expert on. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So let's start off then. So let's start off with the differences between hoodoo, voodoo, voodoo, Southern conjure, root work. Like from your perspective, give us a snapshot of like how they are similar and different together.
All right. Well, one of the major differences, I think, between hoodoo and voodoo or an Orisha work or anything like that is that hoodoo itself, there really isn't an initiation into the practice. It's more folk magic, and it comes from more of, you know, how your family practices it. I always tell people, even in New Orleans, where I'm born and raised, on one block, somebody may do something a little different than somebody else, even in that same block. So it all depends on, you know, your family lineage. So the major thing about hoodoo is that, like I said, you don't have to be initiated. And, you know, it welcomes, you know, your understanding of your past, and merge, submerged within it. As far as Orisha, you have to have a teacher, you have to have an initiator, as well as Vodun, and some things do overlap because sometimes there are some deities that you work with, because maybe grandmother worked with an Orisha, Oya or Oshun. And so that energy is also put into the hoodoo work that you do. And hoodoo itself, the flavoring of it, I always say, is a mixture of African as well as Native American and European influences that were on the continent, as Africans were brought over it during enslavement. And so from that, because you have all of these different languages, these different places that Africans are coming from, they had to find a way to, remember, and so it all just got together and formed into conjure or root work, using what was on the continent, using what they could have brought with them, as well as their knowledge, and sort of putting all of that into a gumbo, a mixture.
I like
and
that.
pulling it out. And so everybody has this practice that they're doing that combines practices from where they came from.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. And I think it's so important to understand. And that's why I wanted you to give clarity to our listeners, because I think like you said, it's a gumbo. So it kind of gets married with other things. And there's subtle lines of differences that I think we should appreciate.
Right.
And we should respect those lines too.
And I think, what makes it easier for people to jump into is the fact that you can pull from Vodun, you can pull from, Santeria or, Lukumi. You can pull from those things and still utilize it and make it stronger. But once again, because we can all do it, it's much easier to access. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Excellent. So because your book is Conjuring the Calabash, can you explain to us, give us your perspective, what the calabash is?
It's the womb of nature. It's the womb of the world. We think about women. We think about, birthing our ideas, our goals, our dreams, and things like that. And so for me, the calabash is about just what we offer to nature, what we offer to the world, how we are one with the world, how we're one with our ancestors, and how we continue along that path, stretching our lineage, from our earliest beginnings to where we are now, how we merge all of that information and move forward, with what we have to do in this world today.
Yeah, move forward. I like that.
Because I think a lot of times we think about magic, or we think about the spirit work that we do, and it becomes, just something that was done a long time ago. We just keep doing it and we don't know why. But I think I wanted to do with this book, I wanted to make it accessible to our lives today. I wanted us to be able to do rituals or do workings and continue with, being a soccer mom or whatever we have to do, going to work or whatever, I wanted it to feel like that. I wanted us not to have to feel like we were ceremonial magicians, Before work, I have to get my robe out,
Right. Like, well, let me put on the 10 pounds of jewelry and
right. We don't have time for that. Maybe sometimes we do, but,
special occasions. I like that.
But not every day, we don't have time. You might pour yourself a cup of coffee and, you can start invoking into that cup of coffee.
Absolutely.
What your day to look like, things like that. So that's still magic, without the robe. But,
I like that.
Robe, robe.
Nice.
So, yeah.
And I like that each chapter, well, really the whole book is super applicable. Like it's exercise heavy in the best way. Some books, they spend too much time waffling on, and then they were like, and here's a meditation you could do. It's like, no, like this book is for learning and practicing hoodoo. At the same time, you also acknowledge like these are some bigger workings. And then I love how you end each chapter with the juju on the fly section.
On the fly.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. And once again, I thought that would be an easy way to just, do some magic, even if you felt like I don't have time. But if you have like 5 to 7 minutes, you can do this and still feel like, I hit those milestones that morning. I'm protected. So, yeah.
Definitely.
And so many of the exercises are also like, like recipes, they're things that will help you. Like you have a foot balm, that recipe that's it's magically infused,
Right,
it's
right.
magically created, but it's also super healthy for your feet.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
it's a reminder that magic at its core is self-care. It's not just, to get what you want, it's to be who you want to be.
Right, right. And fit into your life in that way, so that you can do that, that shampoo, washing your hair and still invoke magic into that. You can be vacuuming the house and still invoke magic into that. So I really wanted it to be, like you said, applicable to all of those types of situations, and not to have to feel like, if I'm not at my shrine, I'm not doing magic. So I wanted it to be you to be able to move it with you in your car, when you're at work, wherever you are, to just be able to get into that space and not feel like, I have to look a certain way in order to be in that space. So yeah.
I love that.
Have you noticed your intuition and connection to your magic is increased in certain places? Or on the opposite side, that you can't seem to connect the same way at other places? What if I told you that there is a map of your life that you can use to connect with and develop your spiritual path? In a collaboration with friend of the Magick Kitchen and host of Mystic and Holistic podcast, Allie Knoll, I am offering an online workshop this December on deity work and locational astrology. In this workshop, we'll combine my knowledge of relationships with gods and goddesses and Allie's expertise as a professional astrologer and astrocartographer to explore how where you live and spend the most time affects not only who you've become, but also can be used to deepen your relationships with deity and spirit. Sign up at the link in the show notes or on seekingnumina.com/workshops.
So within Hoodoo, I noticed that your book is different than a lot of other books I've read because you don't focus as much on nature. Is it fair to say that Hoodoo is a more urban practice in some ways?
In some ways it is. I mean, you can do a lot of root work, a lot of nature work. For this, and then I'm working on some things that will deal more with that later on. But for this book, I really wanted it to be something where, because it came out of, dealing with clients during the pandemic. And so really trying to help them, feel like they had, some control over the world that they were living in, and I wanted it to be something where you really didn't have to go travel far to do a lot of nature magic. I wanted it to be more, conjure within is what I thought about it. And with that, I just felt like it would be easier for people to transition, have that first knowledge of how to do these type of workings. And then we could move more into the root working portion of it all. I wanted people to feel comfortable with Hoodoo, people who practice it, as well as other people who are new to it, feeling like, maybe I want to study more about traditional spirituality, but let me sort of, dip my toe into this. And so try to give them a way to dip their toe in where they don't feel like, they have to make a commitment at that point in time. They could see how it works into their lives. And that's what I really wanted this book to be, more of that, see how it fits. And then if it fits, then we could, delve deeper into much more of the root work side. So it is both. It is nature. Okay. But like I said, with this particular project, I wanted it to be more of, just an exploration for people to see if it fits into their life.
Yeah, and that comes through like in that acknowledgement of reality. Like I think modern authors have moved away from this, but if you read like witchcraft books from the 80s and 90s, it's all about like go out to a sacred grove in your area.
Right.
Who lives in I would love that.
Right.
But like And I love that you describe like distances, and I love how recurring the number 9 is. Maybe that's another question I should ask, but you're like, go find a dumpster at least 9 blocks from your house. It's not like as the crow flies, chart the distance. It's just it's
right,
real.
right,
it's
right,
where
right,
most people
right,
live.
Right.
We have dumpsters
once again,
now.
Who has time to wait for the crow or even?
I love that. Yeah. Right.
So, yeah. And so the 9 itself is it's about birth, rebirth. and Orisha work, and look at me, OYA is about, it's done, what she's taken, you don't need it, don't look for it, and so that 9 gives us that time to have that rebirth, to move forward and to say, okay, I've set this aside, I'm good with it, I'm not looking back, so I'm going to keep moving. And so that's why I use that number a lot, because I really want people to focus in on, it's done, it's gone, let's move forward. So keep the number 9 the same in terms of when we do that work, because it sort of starts to, fit into your head that, okay, I'm moving past this and now I'm moving into the next situation once you start to get a grasp of it.
It's an excellent focus. I like that.
Even
so
the
Elise and I
going that distance of like taking that walk, those 9 blocks.
Yes.
That's you saying, okay, this is how far it is from where I am now, and it's getting farther, and it's staying there while I turn back.
Yeah, and the more work you do, and you invoke that 9, you're already your spirit, everything is already in that position to understand, that it's done.
Yeah. Well, and okay, so going back to like our talk about like having to put on the 10 pounds of jewelry and the robes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This is an activity that helps you drop into that liminal space, that liminal working space where you're like, okay, I'm counting the 9.
Yeah.
So I am doing, like you said, doing the work.
Yeah.
And and ironically, like 9, 3, 6, and 9 are numbers that occur in sacred geometry as spiritual numbers. Like they are meant to infuse us with that magical energy, because they don't necessarily show up like that in natural forms. Right. The Fibonacci sequence and all these other sacred geometry equations and that sort of thing. When you see 3, 6, and 9, you don't necessarily see them either together or in that kind of a sequence or that sum. So I like that you take something deliberately and it's a focus and you use that focus, and then you're in there, you're right where you need to be. I love it.
And it also helps us to challenge. It also helps us to channel that energy between ourselves and the ancestral realm. So with Oya, when we think of 9, we always think about her connection, and the 9 times we would say, or we would call out her name is, changing our tone or our language into the language that she understands. By that 9th time, she understands and is empowered by what we're saying, and she hears us, and it's like, okay, it's open. And so I always think about it that way too. Those 9 blocks you walk, doing it those 9 times. Now you're just, you're knocking on the door, and by that 9th time, it's open.
I love it. I have chills. I have full body chills just talking about it. Like I got it in the book, but like hearing you say it, there's so much power behind that. I love it, love it, love it. So part of what I work with, and I love how you open the book this way. Part of what I work with is shadow work. So going into the darkness and befriending the darkness. So you tell the story of making darkness your adversary. I love the story that you tell in this book. And I don't want to give away too much because I want people to read the book. But I think it really speaks to how we recoil from that darkness. Can you speak a little bit about it without giving up way too much? I mean, if you want to like touch on the story, go for it. It's entirely up to you.
So I think one of the things in terms of the calabash and in terms of talking about this energy between women and men. And I put that story in there because a lot of times talking to clients and even talking to my kids, there's always this, especially with social media, this disconnect between women and men. And especially in the African-American community, there is a lot of or you're not doing this for me, or I'm not getting that, just all of this, what we would call when I was growing up, backbiting, everybody's just fussing and getting at it with each other. And so I wanted the story, because I want people to read the story, but I wanted the story to actually talk about, or explain those challenges that we have with each other, but also how we can go through all of those motions of, getting into it and having this all drawn out, argument, and then coming back full circle to understand that there's a bigger world, there's a bigger problem, or there are bigger situations that we need to handle together. And in order to handle those situations, then we have to come to some type of an agreement. And that is a spiritual agreement, an emotional agreement, as well as a physical agreement between the two. And so the upper and the lower parts of the calabash, and even playing the calabash, putting a skirt on it and with bells or cowrie shells and playing, it becomes an instrument. It lets us know that this story, this understanding, there's this union that's happened. So once you start to play it, you start to, soothe the spirits of the calabash, so that there is a deeper understanding of how we can become unified as people, as couples, as couplings, but also as a universe or as humanity.
Oh, I love that. And the idea of music, playing it, using voice, using bells, using chimes, using rattles.
Yeah.
Music has always spoken to the soul that way, and it soothes the angry energy within us that can't see the connection, that can't see the bigger picture. Yeah, absolutely. I love it.
And I think that for me, that was the idea of calling it Conjuring the Calabash, because it is about that, finding that point where we can self-soothe for us, but we can also soothe each other, our lovers, our children, our community, all of those things. But first we have to start working on how we feel about ourselves.
And actually, speaking of this relationship between men and women, one of the parts of the book that has just been on my mind ever since I read it, it just really, really has stuck with me as something I feel that society needs to delve into a lot more, is your chapter on men and the concept of slavery's legacy still affecting relationships between Black men and women. Could you share a little bit about that with our listeners and how hoodoo can combat that?
Yeah. Well, just not being in control of who we are, think about enslavement of African people. There is no way that I can protect as a man can protect his family or protect his wife, or even say that he has a wife and be taken seriously, because we know during that time period, those relationships were had, but it was sometimes seen as a joke, like a minstrel show for everyone, the plantation owners. So it wasn't a real act. And so you could be taken and said that this person is the one that you're going to have kids with, because we need to, fortify this plantation, with more people. And so all of those things plays into a part of our DNA. And it's residual energy that we still store within us. And so my belief, and the way that I was always taught, is that, we still harbor a lot of that resentment. We're not enslaved, but a lot of that trauma is still part of who we are. And so with hoodoo, I have found that, working together, working to take care of ourselves, and then working to take care of, your husband, your children, if you have male children, or even just coworkers, people that you come in contact with, working to make sure that, your energy, the energy that you expel between the two of you is in a safe space, things like that we can do, because I didn't want it. I wanted it to start off for women, but then I wanted to move into our relationships with everybody else that we encounter, not just our men, but the elders and our children, but definitely with our relationships with each other, because that it's always been a big issue within the African American community. But, with the social media and then with the pandemic, it was a lot of those same feelings, how are we going to be protected? Especially when you had a lot of police brutality and police violence against African Americans. You had a lot of people asking, who's going to protect us, And so a lot of those same things were coming up, and it was dredging up a lot of that trauma again. And so I think with hoodoo, we can start to see that we can't place the blame at each other. We have got to heal each other. And then we have got to try to use that energy and that strength to heal our community.
Yes.
Actually, on that note, like you said, this book sort of came to you through the pandemic. Of course, when I think of what else came out of the pandemic, we also had a rise in protests. I was a teacher in Baltimore at the time, so my students facilitated a pretty long walk, a couple of miles, that ended with an 11-minute kneel to draw attention, of course, to the George Floyd movement that created. And how did the climate of the times at
that moment and up until now, because of course we know that this police brutality has not ended.
No.
How has that informed your writing in this book and perhaps future ones, if you'd like to share anything like that?
Yeah. Well, definitely with this book, like you say, with George Floyd, and then seeing, Breonna Taylor and all of these other incidents happening, it has really wanted me to be able to have something where people could feel like they could be protected as they go to work, or even as their children go off to school and things like that, to feel like I needed to include workings where it wasn't, like I said before, just for women. I needed us to feel like we were unified. And I didn't want a book, to me, if I just talked to women, it would be very divisive to me. And so I wanted to start off with us because I think that we have a strong, sense of how to heal, and from that lean over into everything else with the men as well as our elders and our children, because we know that, for a lot of us, we were still worried about our kids, going, my son is 13 and he's 6'2", so you wonder about, him walking to school with his backpack and looking like, a high schooler, right? And he's a middle schooler. And so how do we protect them? What do we do for that? And so that's why I wanted to have those things, even thinking about the internet, cyber, stalkers and trolls and things like that. How do we protect our children when we are on lockdown and we have to do everything virtually? How do we protect ourselves when we have to do all of these things virtually? And then we have people with, this who feel like they have all of this stuff to say because they're virtual, right? To us, mean things to say. So how do we protect ourselves from all of that? So that's what came out in terms of for the pandemic. For future writings, thinking about how to bring the practice into something, since you're moving from Conjuring the Calabash into, okay, now I really want to do this. I want to learn more about it, more of the root working portion of it. How can I work with individual saints in hoodoo? How can I utilize maybe someone in my family that I want to heighten as a saint for hoodoo? How do I do that? So working more with things like that. And so we're looking at, establishing those type of areas as well as working with tarot. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Well, I look forward to that. That's going to be really cool.
Mm-hmm. I say tarot is right up your alley, Lise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So one of the chapters I enjoyed was the chapter 3. So sexual evolutions and psyche of women. And I feel like this is probably connected to what we just talked about in the relationship with men and women, and also slavery, because bodily autonomy was not a thing.
No, it was not. And
I mean, in our climate today, where more and more we're losing our rights as women, this one really kind of, it was that realization of how deep this kind of thing goes. And you know, thinking about the political climate, thinking about our emotional climate, our social climate, and, how we relate to sex and orgasm and pleasure. Mm-hmm. And how you take the perspective of empowerment. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that and give us give a teaser about it? Because I really want people to read this chapter for themselves.
That's right. I want them to read it.
Yeah.
I think for me, sex magic, because if we look at it as far as just a lot of times for African Americans, right? It's what, that's, we do that, kind of thing, like,
Yeah.
But I'm always telling people, yes, you can do, yes. So just taking back that control, not feeling like you always need a partner for it as well, which is what I always tell people, and then they go, okay, maybe I can kind of get with this, And so I think that using magic, your whole body, I always say, this is your altar right here, your whole body.
You're right. Yeah.
Using that using sex magic to get those things that you need or that you want also gives you a better view of how to take control of your own sensuality and your own sexuality, your own glamour magic, so to speak. And it allows us to open ourselves up to another avenue that we don't always talk about, or we don't always attribute that it can be part of our magic, which it is part of our magic as well. And so with that section, I wanted people to feel comfortable enough to understand that they can also use their sensuality as part of their magic. One of those ways, again, where it fits into our life and we don't even know how easy it can fit into our life, So that's what I really wanted with that section. Because, when I always bring it up to people, they go, sex magic? Is that for Black people? And I'm like, yes. So let me tell you how it works. Let me tell you what you need to get, And so then they'll call back and they're like, I did that, I did all
Nice.
of that. Okay. I like that kind of magic,
Yes.
So, yeah. So I really want people to feel like, nothing is closed to you. You can engage in that too, in that practice too. And once again, a part of it being an easy part of your life, If you're going to have a masturbation session, it might as well include some sex magic, right?
Why? Yeah. Why not? You're there. Why not? I love it. Good.
So, yeah.
Yeah, your clients are lucky to have you. I feel like your voice comes through in this book really well. Like you're the way, like in that chapter in particular, and in any sensitive areas, because some people, their ego butts up against a topic and they're like, no, I'm not, that's not for me. Like you really coax and introduce it in such a
wanted it to sound like me. That was the big thing. And we kept going back and forth. And I was like, I needed to, I don't want it to sound academic, I want it to sound like me because I want people to feel comfortable with it, and a lot of times when you get them comfortable with it, then it'll just start spilling it. They'll start telling it like it is, it's not really secretive to talk about it, and then, first thing I say is you masturbate, right? And they'll go, well, yeah, then everybody, well, then let's include this, let's kick it up a notch,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, on that note of like just relatable modern magic for people that exist right now, here and now in this world, I loved your inspiring voices section in each chapter as well. And I learned a lot about these artists like Sade. Like I thought I had heard Sade's music before, but now I can hear it,
Right.
Now I'm listening.
Yeah. And I wanted to have the playlist to go with the book as well. On Spotify, there's a playlist that goes with the book. And so you can find whatever you like, whatever music, even from those artists or from other artists that may inspire you, and that can be part of your magic when you're doing these working, help, get you ready for it before you start those workings. Once again, I didn't want it to feel like you have to, listen to a Gregorian chant, before you start doing magic, you can listen to whatever you want and it can still be magical and nobody has to know, you're just listening to Sade and, you're going to go home and get grounded. So,
I absolutely love Sade. Like she's one of my absolute favorites. And my husband thinks I'm nuts because I listen to jazz and I listen to the stuff that I don't know, I enjoy it.
Right.
It speaks to something deep within. And reading that part of your book, I'm like, that makes sense,
Right.
And I think we've all had enough of Gregorian stuff. Like
right. That's when I watch The Omen, go binge The Omen. Right?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly. We'll get some of that in there. One of the other chapters I really enjoyed was the Kundalini of hair. So you start talking about hair, fingernails, toes, blood, urine, all those icky things that I think sometimes we shy away from in our practice. But you make it into a nice practice. Like one of your exercises, shampoo that loser right out of your hair. I love that. That was just so fun. It was clever. And it's really, those I thought it was one of those essential practices we should all be focused on. Like when you're done, you're done. Like be done with it.
When we cut those cords, we don't think about those things. You know, a lot of times we think that the relationships or whatever we're doing, situation is over because we've done this ritual. But then what about us? You know, all that time you spent with that person, they linger everywhere.
It does.
You know, or the situation, it lingers everywhere. So we have to clean it from us. If we're done with it, we really have to clean it from us. Otherwise, it seeps back into our lives, you know, and we're wondering what happened, you know? I didn't do a full cleansing of everything. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. No, it's not always just a one and done thing. I think that's what a lot of people look for is they want that magic pill, that magic spell, the one and done thing where, okay, I did this now, I should be done with it. But we have to mourn, we have to separate and, you know, in a sense, you know, quote unquote, I'm using my fingers, the cord cutting of the event or the person or the relationship. I like that. Right.
Yeah, and it's never a one and done thing because it wasn't one and done when you just got together or got involved in that. There was time invested. So you're going to have to invest time to, you know, get rid of it, get it off of you. Yeah.
And I guess that speaks volumes to the daily rituals, the simple daily rituals of reinforcing the new energy you need moving on.
Right. And you know, like people will, you know, they'll get kind of like, about the blood and the nails and things like that. But one of the things I want people to understand is that those are practices that are used, you know, and even if you never do those things, then if you see something like that, then you'll be aware of what, you know, what is actually going on, you know. I've had clients who've come to say that, you know, someone showed up with a pot of spaghetti or red sauce or something just out of the blue, you know, and they're thinking, hey, you know, I want to, you know, just, you know, let's get over this argument. You know, I brought this, you know, and they're like,
always be suspicious.
Right. But, you know, that it has happened, you know, you have people, older people who will always say, not doing that. I'm not doing that, you know. And so it's a common thing for me. I've always heard that. Don't do that. Don't let them do that. Don't, you know, but a lot of times people don't know, you know. They really don't. They think, okay, they brought some goodies, you know. Dive in.
And this is ancient, like this is ancient practices. What I study is occult herbalism and the poison path. So one of my areas of study is studying the old, you know, wood carvings and that sort of thing of these practices and the witches' feast. And that is absolutely, they would lace the food with, you know, blood, urine, hair, black bread, that sort of thing to create this magical container. And, you know, if you don't know what you're doing, you don't know who's making the food or why, you get yourself into some situations.
Yeah. You know, we've had stories where some men have eaten it and they've got a new wife, you know, new life.
Yeah, oopsie.
So oops, you know. So a lot of that, you know, I wanted to just make people aware of just like I've always heard it, there are other people who've always heard it, and then they don't mind, you know, diving in to do that. You know, if I want that situation, or I want that man, you know, or that woman, you know, I'll do this thing, you know. And so just to be aware of how the practice can be used to heal, but also how it can be used for somebody else to get what they feel like is what they want, you know. They may feel like it's not a bad thing to do that because that's what I want. So it might be bad for you, but it's not bad for me, you know, kind of thing. So, yeah.
And actually, that reminds me of another question I had. Within hoodoo workings, I noticed like there's not a specific like preamble to your exercises, you know, like I'm sure somebody could decide to include it in an exercise in a bigger ritual, but is there like you know, in the Wiccan practices, there's like the whole, like you invite the elements, you invite the god or goddess you're working with. Like, is there a more deity, is there a deity relationship with hoodoo, and how is that introduced?
That's a good question. Well, a lot of times it all depends. Like I said earlier, who you study with, where you get your learning from. Sometimes people would go to, like in New Orleans, the Baptist church. And so they might incorporate some biblical verses, before they do the working. If they are, are Catholic, they may sing, or do something else, or some Hail Marys or something like that before they start doing the workings. But it sort of all depends. There are others who are just, root workers, and they do whatever comes on their heart, when they're doing that work. With this, like I said, with this particular book, I really wanted it to feel like you could say whatever was with you. You could use what I have in the book, but I wanted it to seem easy enough for you to feel like, you're comfortable with, coming up with your own words, to say, and not feel like, you have to, just follow a standard reading or a poem or, whatever, to get it going. You could put the fire under your words by using your own words. But yeah, it all depends. So like I say, there is no specific initiation. So there are no rules to what can be said. So some people will use the Psalms, some people will use a specific scripture. It just all depends on who taught you and, how you want to do the work.
Are the Orishas gods and goddesses, or are they more like archetypes, or again, is that just a personal connection?
Okay. Energy. They're energies that are given names and ascribed as names because of the energy. Some people will consider them goddesses. It all depends on who you talk to, gods and goddesses. Some people, restrict them straight to energy, and we give the energy these names. These forces of energy have these names, and because of how they're utilized in the world, we will ascribe male, female to them. But if somebody is initiated, a man could be initiated to what we would consider a female Orisha, as well as a woman could be initiated to what we consider a male Orisha. So forces of energy, and because of how they come about within our everyday life, we say that this one is male or this one is female. And so sometimes gods and goddesses. Mm-hmm.
So they're almost like egregores in a way as well.
Yeah,
like they're
almost,
just this energetic.
Awesome.
Right. Like we would associate, lightning with Oya. Right. But she is with Shango, right? The thunder, this fire that comes up under us. And together, when there's a thunderstorm, they ride together, right? She comes out there and she says, let's get it going, right? And so they move across the sky together. So usually if there is really bad weather, like in where we live, we hear about a tornado or something like that, then I'll do an Oriki for Oya. Once the storm is coming, I may do an Oriki for Shango. Right. Now, in that sense, because I guess I'm a child of Oya, I would say she is very powerful. So I can deal with the thunder. I just don't want the tornado. Right. So I'm constantly doing the Oya and I'm praising Shango as well. But I'm really trying to keep my mama happy so that she will spare my home. So, yeah. But yeah, they're the forces of energy. And like I say, men can be associated with the female deity and women can be associated with the male deity. Mm-hmm. And women, lots of times, they love that. They got that Shango energy. They're good with it,
Amazing. Oh, I love it. Oh, okay, then I guess that brings me to where I was curious, because I spent a lot of time in chapter 7 with Mother Earth Sustain Me, because I felt like that showed up as familiar to me as far as like the grounding practices and being emotionally and morally grounded. And it mirrored, I guess, some of my core values, and it correlates with that magical lifestyle of we're always trying to be better people. We're always trying to connect with the values that we hold within our practice. Can you elaborate on your perspective within this chapter in grounding to earth and grounding to our emotional
right
sense of being? I'm trying to pick the words. I can't word.
For me, I'm always thinking about how can I connect to the land where I live, but also how can I pay homage to those who were here before me. And so in this particular area, northern Louisiana, where we live, there were the Caddo Native people were here before us. And so I'm always doing rituals for them to feel grounded. After work, I go outside and I'm making sure that my soles of my feet touch the earth, so that I can feel like that they're supporting me, in my travels, in my choices that I make. And I always feel like that is very important to me, whether I'm, calling on any elements, if I'm touching the earth, and I can be doing it quietly. I'm making my peace and I'm sealing that pact, with the universe, that I'm going to continue to move about, as you say, with my values intact, morally sound as I can be each and every day, and try to encourage that within my community. So it's always about my ancestors, but then remembering those who came before me. And I think that is most important. And that's another area where menstrual flow is used, pouring it into the earth as a remembrance and a seal of understanding that blood was spilled here. In order for any of this to exist. In me, at this point in my own life, blood was spilled, and blood is what is conducive in terms of healing, and to understand that in order to make peace, sometimes there will be blood.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And you talk about that in your story of Whitehall and Red River, which that story just gripped me. It felt so palatable, just the place that you have to go to do your work. You have to make peace with that place and what happened there.
Yes. And it is like we talked about earlier, it's a continual thing. It's not something that happens one time and it's all good. Each time I go there, even as a practitioner for so many years of my life doing this work, it still grips at you, it still pulls at you, and you have to go in there, and there's all of this energy, right, that doesn't want you there, and I still have to fight that and still have to deal with that, and like come home and get rebalanced and grounded again.
My work is mostly with land spirits and spirits of place, and that, as you were speaking before, that story is what came to mind from your book as well, about Whitehall. And sometimes we don't have the ability, and I think the South in the US is a good example of this. We don't have the ability to just Google it and there it all is. Like I live in Greece, and you really can. There's going to be stories going back 3,000 years for a given land spirit, but you're oftentimes going with your intuition alone into these places. And having those foundational.
And a lot of that energy is so deeply rooted in those places, right? There is no, we watch these television shows. There is no once going in, we're going to clean it out and you're good. It's deep. It's just as deeply rooted as the trees around the area,
right?
And so going into those places, you just have to, just get yourself together and do what you have to do. And then once you're out of there, understand that there's going to be that cleansing that has to take place.
It makes me think of creating a new legacy, because a legacy there was created there. It was a negative legacy. It was a horrific legacy. So we have to, moving forward, like we talked about before, looking ahead, moving forward, we have to create that new legacy.
Yes.
And creating that new legacy is up to us, energetically, mentally, emotionally. Yeah. Oof, body chills again.
So in a lot of books that I've read, visualization is like given as the answer, like it could be a meditation and they're like, imagine you are blah, blah, blah. In your book, it's like, this will happen because you did this. It's more active and less visualizing. What is Hoodoo's relationship with the concept of visualization?
For me, it's always been the movement of, we have to move. We have to make it happen. We can visualize. There's no problem with visualization, but we have to still get up and go like as if, what we just visualized is working. It's, even if you don't see it, you're thinking, when is it going to happen? You still have to get up and move like it is. You still have to get in place of your ordinary day. You still have to get it out, get it done. And so I think a lot of times when we think of visualization, I've had clients and it's like, well, if I just sit here for 15 minutes each day and visualize, eventually it's going to manifest, right? But you still have to be a participant in your life, is what I tell them. And so for a lot of hoodoo practitioners would say, okay, that's fine. You've done that. Now get up and go to work, or, get up and go to school. Let's keep it moving and don't think about it. So it's more of that. You visualize, but you don't cling on to it. You accept it and you say to yourself, it's done, and you keep going.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And, there really isn't a problem with, you can still go back the next day if you want to sit with it, but you don't sit with it in a sense as if you're, begging and hoping, oh, is it going to happen?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. That's where the problem comes, because that's where you start confusing your magic. It's like you're saying you're doing this magical work and it's going to work, but then you're sitting here with doubt, and so what happened? The magic doesn't know what to do,
Right. You keep calling it back to you.
Do you want me to leave? Right. Do you want me to
You want me to go do my work, or are you going to keep calling me back here and we're going to talk about this?
What are we doing?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I see that a lot too. Like people sometimes go too far with it, where they're like, okay, write out all your dreams and then burn the paper.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
You might want to remember what you wrote. So maybe have a carbon copy or something. Like, I think that's good, because we always say that too on the show. Like, witchcraft, paganism, druidry, alternative spiritual paths are about active work. If you want passive, go to church and sit in the back. We're here to do it.
That's it. And I think a lot of times people, like you say, they come from the church. And so when they go into any type of magical situation, they expect it to happen right now. Oh, you do that, right? So you're going to make this happen tonight. It's going to happen tonight when I get home. And we tell them, no, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So, yeah.
Conscious effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not Hogwarts. So make it happen.
Yeah. So, Chapter 10, I also really enjoyed, because you start talking about jazz funerals, which I love jazz. So, and watching, I've not attended one of these funerals. I would love to someday, respectfully, of course. But like the idea of celebrating the life of someone through music, through dance, through a procession. I think that helps with that grieving process. And you talk about the grieving process in this chapter. And how we're not necessarily given that opportunity. You're not done yet. Type of attitude.
Right. Yeah, because in the Baptist church, a lot of times it's okay. We're done with this. We've gone to the gravesite. That's it. Don't talk about them anymore. That's a bad thing, almost an evil thing, right? Even to say, I saw my grandmother or I saw my parent. We don't talk about that. We're done with them. Sort of thing. But when we look at it from an African standpoint, traditionally the dead are buried within the house, under the house, right? So you're always standing on, in a sense, your shoulders of your ancestors, because they're there. Yes. And so in New Orleans, since we don't do that, right? We're below sea level. So we the jazz funerals, they give a chance for you to take the person to all of their favorite places. You stop everywhere they've ever loved, the bar they love.
Love it.
You get their favorite drink, you pour it, you take some of it. I mean, it becomes a celebration, which is what it should be, right?
Yeah.
And then the dancing is remembering. It's a way to heighten the energy. You're charging your body up, right? And all of this charged energy helps this person reach the ancestral plane. It helps them to understand that, okay, this is my last dance with you guys, but I'm going forward, and then I'll be looking down and I'll be able to assist you. So it's a way to walk them to the gates without entering yourself.
And
it is so that's why and they could last a very long time. All depends,
especially if the person was an extrovert and liked to visit a bunch of places,
right. So it where you have that absence of not being able to have that person buried in the home, you still have the celebration because that is still a part of it all. You still have that going to everywhere, all of their favorite places. And usually they'll write it out. I want to go here, I want to go there, and you do that. You honor all of that.
I love
so it is a sacred procession. There is the church part, and then there is that part. And even sometimes the second line people will go into the church, to make sure it's we're ready, and then they'll escort the family out. And it gives you that chance to grieve, but in a more celebratory, sense, and with people who are able to share into that with you, and comfort you with it through dance, through song, through music.
Absolutely. I love that. And I love the celebration aspect of it because funerals, from I guess our typical cultural standpoint, like it's this very solemn thing. You're not supposed to laugh. You're not even supposed to cry. Like you can't even, it's supposed to be appropriate, but showing any emotion is some sort of taboo that our culture has created. And emotions are cleansing. Emotions are opening. And like really off topic, but like we have not gotten a new dog, a new member of our family as a four-legged canine because our dog passed away. It's been almost 5 years and we still feel her presence. Like she has not left us yet. So why is that any different for humans? Why do we have to just get over it?
Right. And it gives us a chance to allow them to make that movement into the ancestral realm so that they can come back. I always tell people so that they can come back and assist us with the things that we need, and that's the letting go is the letting go, but not forever. It's letting them get the knowledge and understanding of, how to process being an ancestor, how to do those things.
That's with other
people who are already there. They have to get their training, so that they can come back and help us.
That makes sense. That's one of the things I teach my students is like, if you're going to contact ancestors, don't assume that they are automatically healed or balanced in death. Because if they were a horrible person in life, they're probably still a horrible person.
That's what I always say too, right?
Okay, nice.
Yes, that is exactly it. Because people, they think that, right? They think, oh, well, they passed on. So now it's time to call, the uncle who could never keep a wife, I'm going to ask him about my marriage. No. He is not the one to call.
No.
No.
Leave him alone.
Right. I can bet what he's going to help you with.
Right, exactly. It's not going to be happy.
No. Uncle's going to be happy. You won't. I'm up is what he's thinking. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that you touched on that because, that's something that I always tell people, like, don't think that it's okay to contact them if they were not right.
Right. And I always tell people, you can, you can light a candle for and hope for that, that the other ancestors who are there with them, help them with their healing, but even still, you don't know how long that's going to take. Just do that and contact somebody else, who's much more helpful to you in life. They can be helpful to you now, but that is always a big thing. Everybody wants to just, I remember them, let's call them. And, everybody you don't want to call.
Hold up.
Right. I see you have your altar stacked, but some of those people don't call them. Right.
That's an excellent point. I love that.
And I like that in chapter 10, when you're talking about crossing over, that in these funerals, visiting these places, like you're giving the soul a chance to say goodbye and fully leave. And it's interesting because I didn't realize this until I was reading your book, that this was how funerals were done culturally in New Orleans. And when I visited New Orleans, I was a little disappointed because there weren't all these ghosts and vampires. And I thought I would be feeling all of these presences. I'd walk through haint after haint. And I really didn't feel that. And I kind of can attribute that to, they died well, they were buried well, they're remembered well. Like, that's beautiful. It's great news.
Right. Because a lot of that energy, it's there if you call on it, but it's not just if they're good, then they're not just roaming around waiting, So Yeah, and like, television and things like that would have us believe. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. I even did like a cheesy like ghost tour. I went with my family for the holidays like several years ago, and that was what they wanted to do, and it was fun, and some of it was so dark. It's like on one corner is a myth of a vampire, and then on another is like the very real tragedies that happened, and they're pointing all these things out, and like the real tragic energies you could kind of pick up on, like at least the egregore of them, like that residual. And in fact, these tour guides are contributing to it. But then a lot of it, I don't know. That's sort of also where I study like land spirits versus ghosts. Like a land spirit, they've never been a human; they're just the spirit of the land. Then there's the very real egregore that of New Orleans that is contributed by ghosts and atrocities and hurricanes and all of it.
Right. And a lot of those the guides, a lot of times they just, get these little trashy books, and then they, want to become a guide, and they can remember all this stuff. And a lot of times they just take you to places, anywhere, and they'll say this is that, a lot of times it's not steeped in history, of the city itself. So yeah. Another thing I wanted to touch on in terms of the death is the covering of mirrors. That's a big deal too in the home, especially if someone dies in the home, not having that spirit attach itself to the home. And so there is that, the mirrors are covered. The mirrors are also covered, like if there is a thunderstorm, a really bad thunderstorm, that energy, because we understand that the energy, the lightning and all of that, it brings it opens a portal for other energy to come through, move within the home. And so mirrors are covered during those times as well. So there is a lot of, even if people don't say it's hoodoo, a lot of the practices, it's root work. They may say, I'm conjure, you go do that, you go do this, and be quiet. We're quiet when, because we want to make sure during a thunderstorm, if there are those messages or things that are being heard, that exactly where that energy is coming from. So a lot of that takes place as well. So those are some things that I think a lot of times people hear about or even know, as they grow, and they don't really know why, why that happens. They just continue to be a part of it and doing it. So one of my teachers would tell this story. She would say when she was she was studying with the Santeria priestess, and she would always take this paper and she would ball it up into, kind of like fold it into a square and put it under the table. And then she would start all of her rituals. And so she said nobody would ever say anything, And so it would always happen for years. And so when she was able to lead her own house, her own Orisha house, she did the same thing. And so she said she was inviting her teacher over, and her teacher's sitting there and she's watching her and she's doing it and she's putting it on. She says, well, what are you doing? And she says, I'm putting, like you always do before we start. She said, well, I did that because my table was lopsided.
Oh my God. That's the best.
Well, why are you doing it? I thought that was what we had to do before we started ritual.
Oh, I love that.
I think a lot of times we need to really know, why we're doing things, and if those things will suffice in our lives, So I just wanted to share that. I thought that was
great. Well, and I was waiting for you to say like something was written on the paper, because I kept thinking, I'm like, is the table lopsided? Like, why is this happening?
Oh, that's
because that would make sense. You want your message to hold up the table. That I would link that. I would make that connection.
Right.
It's support.
Yeah. So sometimes we follow our teachers, or we follow even in books and things like that. We books, and we just follow along, and some things may, fit our lives, and some things may not, like you were saying earlier about the older witchcraft books, right? And a lot of times we still want to do things, but we can't find the raven. We can't, we can't, there's no way to do those things.
We can't make corpse water.
Right. Why do I need the raven? If I have sparrows, can I follow the sparrow or whatever?
Yeah.
So just figuring out how it fits into your life and, what you can use. And which is why, like I say, incorporating the playlist with the book, trying to find different types of music and jazz or whatever, you can use it to feel grounded, to feel, heightened enough to do sex magic or whatever. You don't need a specific thing for that.
Yeah.
Actually, speaking of ingredients, your exercises, some of them include lots of different herbs. If somebody doesn't have access to them or they're starting slow, are there 3 core ingredients, not just herbs? You talk about Hoist cologne,
right. If they don't have access, 3 core things that I would say: parsley. They could definitely use a lot of parsley. Bay leaf, if they could get to bay leaf, they could use that one. An onion, any type of onion, whole onion. And they'll see ways to use it in the book, but those are some core things they can use. Pepper, any type of pepper, and I would just go ahead and start there with that. If you're trying to repel something, definitely using that pepper. I've even used the onion. If there is a situation where, there's a lot of arguing going on, they could use the onion. I would use sometimes 30 needles, like the little needles that you would use. Not needles, I'm sorry. The stick pins. And that would help. Things like that, there are simple things in there that they can incorporate. You don't have to go out and buy a lot of things. You could use a lot of the same things, over and over again. A lot of your invocation, what you say over the herbs, will tell the herb what it needs to be used for. And that's what I like about root work, because once you start talking to it, today you may want to use it for love. Tomorrow you may want to use it to repel something. It's about what you say to it too. You say it, you talk to it, and you give it that power to do what it needs to do for you at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's another part of the magic. Yeah. That's another part of the magic in terms of we're thinking about, the enslaved people, right? Using what they had and making it work by telling it that this is what I need you to do right now. This is what I need from you right now.
Yeah. Your intention goes a long way.
And actually, I think when it comes to having lots of steps involved in a ritual or working, it's so helpful for the monkey mind, to calm itself. Right. Because then it's saying, okay, I'm adding the galangal, I'm adding the lavender, I'm taking this out, I'm lighting this now. And then all of that starts to have power, even though we can say, okay, we know it's the intention within that matters.
And even plain water, I tell people, if that's what you got, use that. Whatever you say over the water, whatever you do, and then you pour the water, that as well is going to, infuse it with your intention. And you can use it for that. You can use it for your magic, for baneful magic. You can use it, for whatever you need it to use it for. If that's what you have, use that. Don't be limited and say, okay, I can't start today because I don't have bay leaves or, parsley in my, my cupboard. I can't start. If you have water, use that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you enjoying the show? If you are, we'd really appreciate a 5-star review. It helps us to reach more listeners like you and to keep doing the Magick Kitchen podcast. Thank you.
So, can you tell our listeners where they can get Conjuring the Calabash, how they can connect with you and keep up to date with your work?
Okay. Yeah. Well, they can get it from Amazon, anywhere they buy books, anywhere you get it. They can go there and get that. They can follow me on Twitter. I'm Yawiyah on Twitter. Instagram, Mawiyah, Facebook, Mawiyah Bomani. And so in the few weeks, I'll probably be doing some workshops and I'll post that, probably on Facebook and Instagram, things like that. But just follow me there and then they can keep up with whatever's coming up.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think people are going to get a lot out of your book and I can't wait to read your next ones.
Yes. I can't wait for the next one. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all. This was fun.
Yes. Merry meet,
merry part,
and merry meet again. Thank you for joining us on the Magick Kitchen podcast. Please visit my website, leandrawitchwood.com, for news, information, and more episodes.
I'm Elise Wells, and I can be found at Seeking Numina on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and seekingnumina.com. That's Seeking, Numina.